Now, the subdued global economy has forced the Coega Development Corporation to change their strategy to attract investments in the area.
Executive Manager for Business Development, Christopher Mashigo, told our reporter, Glorious Sefako Musi, that they've had to sell operational efficiencies provided by the industrial zone. The area, of course, adjacent to the ports of Port Elizabeth and Ngqura, ideal for export-orientated manufacturers.
It has had an impact insofar as the priority sectors are concerned, which meant that we had to re-engineer and to reconfigure our approach to match our value proposition to those investment sectors that are most mobile at this point. And what we did was to focus more on efficiency-seeking investments. As you would appreciate that we are adjoining an area that has a very long history of industrialization and therefore a built-in strength insofar as manufacturing efficiencies are concerned. We then looked at those investments that may well be ceasing to derive that benefit elsewhere, but seeking to access other markets and taking advantage of the fact that we are adjacent to two ports, which combined give us access to more than 134 global destinations. So we then started looking at export-oriented efficiency seeking, whereas market seeking, for example, would have been on the decline.
South Africa experienced low confidence levels in recent times. What would you say are some of the concerns that investors raise about South Africa at the moment?
To sum it up, investors look for predictability. It is common cause that not everything will be in place perfectly, but really predictability. And I think in the case of investors, the Special Economic Zone dispensation, the promulgation of the Act, and then the operationalization insofar as getting the guidelines going and also making sure that that operating environment prevails in special economic zones. What that meant was that effectively the country created enclaves where you have the sort of environment that they are looking for in the current volatile global space.
What's in the pipeline in terms of investments in the area?
Firstly, we are seeing an increase in the automotive sector, and as you may have seen as you were touring the sites, that there is at least 11 billion rands that is being put in. So vehicle production, from small vehicles right through to large utility vehicles, that, and as well as a growing component manufacturing sector. That is what over the next 24 to 36 months will be gaining momentum in the IDZ. In addition to that, the agro-processing sector, for the simple reason that we are within an economic radius from good sources of citrus and deciduous fruits for the export market, and Coega effectively serves as both a processing as well as a logistics hub for that. Then there is the services center. It is an environment where we have grown quite exponentially since 2011 and are set to continue to occupy that niche for ourselves into the foreseeable future. And lastly, the energy sector. And there we're looking at the gas economy, first and foremost, but not only limited to generation of energy, but taking gas as feedstock for a chemical sector. We already are seeing a growth in a chemical sector that is also linked to downstream energy, and particularly if we get to maybe gas to liquid production, and that which is the plastic or polymer conversion industry, if I'm to use that sort of terminology. We already have a number of companies that are setting up in that direction, and of course in the near term we are looking at mega projects more on the conversion of gas to power conversion or those kind of projects.
How does Coega ensure that previously disadvantaged groups don't get left behind?
Previously disadvantaged groups participate in several ways. Firstly, at the start of the investment projects is generally construction, where we have a fairly sophisticated mechanism for making sure that companies that are within the area participate meaningfully at all levels of value addition. The same thing at the level of supporting the manufacturing enterprises. In fact, a recent survey, I say recent is that it was in the tail end of 2015, the extent to which companies operating in the IDZ source from within the immediate area is very high, and that means it's both in terms of inputs as well as labor. But another vital statistic is that nearly 60% of the workforce at the factory door, but also in construction, is people under the age of 35.
Okay, so a new push to get investment into the Coega zone. And that's a wrap. What a brilliant business week it has been. The retail wars that we
Yes,
spoke about,
yeah.
the JSE at all-time highs, talk of a 10 billion rand bailout for SA.
No, it's certainly not been boring. Let's see what was going to happen next week. But in the meantime, have a great business weekend. In the meantime, we say goodbye, because that's Friday's edition of Prime Biz.
But we will return with your general news, and we're hoping to speak to the UDM's Bantu Holomisa. You've been following